A quiet parking lot. A gun. A little girl grips her dad's hand. Instead of panic, a smile, steady, brave, full of faith. A powerful CEO sees it. In one choice, his cold life cracks. He offers help. The clip goes viral. Cameras swarm. But a hidden past comes out. An old arrest from a hungry night. Pressure mounts angry investors, loud headlines, cruel whispers at school. One heart is changing. One empire is closing in. Why did the dad smile with a gun in his face? What will the CEO risk when the truth turns on them both? When the world says, walk away, will he choose profit or courage? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The Houston sun beat down on the cracked pavement of the grocery store parking lot, casting long shadows behind shopping carts and parked cars. Marcus Hayes guided his daughter Lily between the vehicles, their plastic grocery bags swinging gently with each step. The 6-year-old skipped alongside him, her dark braids bouncing as she moved. "Can we make chocolate chip cookies, Daddy?" Lily asked, her eyes bright with excitement. "With extra chips?" Marcus chuckled, the sound warm and deep. "Extra chips? I don't know about that, sweet pea." He shifted the bags in his hands, pretending to consider it seriously. "How about we add just enough to make them perfect?" "But extra is perfect," Lily insisted, giggling as she tugged at his sleeve. Her small fingers wrapped around the worn fabric of his work shirt, the one he'd changed out of after his morning shift at the garage. "Tell you what," Marcus said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "We'll make them together, and you can be my official chocolate chip counter." He loved these moments with his daughter. Simple joy. Filled conversations that made even routine grocery trips feel special. They reached their old blue sedan, its paint slightly faded from years under the Texas sun. Marcus set down the grocery bags and reached into his pocket for his keys. That's when he felt it, the shift in the air, the heavy presence behind him. "Give me the keys." The voice was rough, urgent. "Now." Marcus turned slowly, his heart racing but his movements deliberate and calm. A man in a dark hoodie stood there, face obscured by a ski mask despite the warm weather. The gun, in his trembling hand, caught the afternoon light. Lily let out a small whimper and pressed herself against Marcus's leg, her tiny fingers digging into his jeans. Marcus could feel her shaking, but his voice remained steady as he addressed the man. "Okay, brother, no problem at all." He kept his hands visible, movements slow and non-threatening. The keys jingled softly as he held them out. The masked man snatched them, his breathing heavy and irregular. "Get back! Don't try anything!" Marcus took a step backward, gently guiding Lily with him. She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. Marcus looked down at his daughter, and something remarkable happened. He smiled. It wasn't forced or fearful, but genuine and warm, filled with a depth of peace that seemed to defy the situation. "It's okay, sweetheart," he said softly, his hand resting protectively on her shoulder. "Things can be taken from us, but never our hope." The carjacker faltered for a moment, as if Marcus's calm demeanor had caught him off guard. Then he jumped into the sedan, the engine roaring to life. The tires squealed against the pavement as he peeled away, leaving behind the scent of burning rubber. Across the parking lot, James Thornton sat in his Mercedes, frozen in disbelief at what he'd just witnessed. The CEO had been on his phone, handling a business crisis, when the commotion caught his attention. Now he stared at Marcus and Lily through his tinted windows, watching as the father knelt down to comfort his daughter. James's manicured fingers gripped his steering wheel tightly. He'd seen countless negotiations, dealt with hostile takeovers, witnessed people at their most desperate. But this was different. This man had just been robbed at gunpoint, yet he smiled. Not a nervous smile, not a relieved one, but something else entirely. "Why is he smiling?" James muttered to himself, his voice barely above a whisper in the leather-scented silence of his car. The question seemed to echo in his mind, stirring something uncomfortable in his chest. Through the windshield, he watched as Marcus wrapped his arms around Lily, who had buried her face in her father's chest. The man was still smiling, still radiating that inexplicable peace as he stroked his daughter's hair and whispered what appeared to be words of comfort. The groceries still sat on the ground where they'd been placed, ordinary items scattered across extraordinary circumstances. A gallon of milk, a loaf of bread, and what looked like a package of chocolate chips lay partially visible through the thin plastic bags. Remnants of a normal Saturday afternoon turned upside down in an instant. James noticed a store employee rushing out, phone in hand, presumably calling the police. Other shoppers were gathering now, some offering help, others just watching. But Marcus remained centered in this chaos, a steady presence in a sea of reaction and concern. The CEO's hand moved to his chest, where an empty ache had begun to form. He recognized the feeling. It was the same one he got late at night in his penthouse office, when the silence grew too loud and the success felt too hollow. But this time it was sharper, more acute, as if Marcus's smile had somehow illuminated the shadows he'd been ignoring. The father's words carried across the parking lot on the warm breeze. "See, Lily? Look how many people are coming to help. There's always more good than bad in the world. Always more hope than fear." James's throat tightened. When was the last time he'd believed something like that? When was the last time he'd smiled with such genuine peace, such unshakable faith? He couldn't remember. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The normal bustle of the parking lot had transformed into a scene of concerned clusters of people, some offering their phones, others sharing what they'd witnessed. Yet Marcus remained remarkably composed, now helping Lily dry her tears with the gentle touch only a loving father could provide. From his vantage point, James watched as Marcus declined offers of rides home, thanking people with genuine gratitude but assuring them they would be fine. The man's dignity in the face of this violation was staggering. No anger, no fear, no bitterness. Just that smile, that peace, that unwavering strength that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than mere optimism. The sound of approaching sirens grew louder, but James barely noticed. His attention remained fixed on the father and daughter, on the puzzle of that smile, on the mystery of a man who could face armed robbery with such profound serenity. In all his years of climbing the corporate ladder, of accumulating wealth and power, James had never encountered anything quite like this. He found himself leaning forward in his seat, studying Marcus's face as if it held some secret code he needed to crack. The man's expression hadn't changed. It still radiated that same inexplicable peace, that same steady assurance that had appeared the moment the gun was drawn. "Why is he smiling?" James whispered again. But this time, the question felt different. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was something closer to longing, to recognition of something vital he'd lost along the way, or perhaps had never possessed at all. Marcus and Lily sat at their small kitchen table, the warm glow of their single overhead light casting shadows on the faded yellow walls. Their modest apartment wasn't much, but tonight it felt like a sanctuary after the day's events. Steam rose from 2 bowls of spaghetti, Lily's portion cut into kid-sized bites. "Daddy, you made the sauce extra yummy tonight," Lily said, twirling pasta around her fork with careful concentration. She had changed into her favorite purple pajamas, decorated with white stars, her hair now in 2 neat bedtime braids. Marcus smiled at his daughter across the table. "That's because I added our secret ingredient, remember? Extra love," Lily giggled, sauce dotting her chin. A knock at the door made them both look up. Marcus approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. He relaxed when he saw Mrs. Rodriguez from next door, along with Mr. Chen from across the hall. "Marcus, we saw you on Channel 5, Mrs. Rodriguez exclaimed as he opened the door. She was still wearing her nurse's scrubs from her hospital shift. "Are you and Lily okay?" Mr. Chen nodded vigorously beside her. "The whole building's been talking about it. You're a hero, man." Marcus shook his head, embarrassed by the attention. "We're fine, just grateful no one got hurt. Would you like to come in for a minute? We have plenty of pasta." The neighbors stepped inside, and Lily waved enthusiastically. "Hi, Mrs. Rodriguez. Hi, Mr. Chen. Daddy's famous now." "Not famous, sweetheart," Marcus corrected gently. "Just thankful." The landline phone rang, its shrill tone cutting through the conversation. Marcus picked it up, listening as a rapid-fire voice identified itself as a reporter from the Houston Chronicle. Mr. Hayes, we'd love to do an exclusive interview about your extraordinary response to today's carjacking. Your smile has become quite the talking point. I appreciate the interest, Marcus interrupted politely. But I need to focus on keeping my daughter's life as normal as possible right now. Thank you for understanding. He placed the receiver down, only for it to ring again immediately. Mrs. Rodriguez stepped forward. Why don't I make some tea? You look like you could use it. The phone kept ringing throughout the evening. Each time, Marcus answered with the same patient decline, his voice never losing its warmth. Mr. Chen watched in amazement as Marcus handled the 10th call with the same grace as the first. You really are something else, Marcus, Mr. Chen said, shaking his head. Most people would have lost their cool by now. Lily had moved to the worn couch, drawing in her sketchbook while the adults talked. Daddy never loses his cool, she stated matter-of-factly, not looking up from her artwork. He says getting angry just makes your heart heavy. Across town, in a penthouse apartment, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Houston skyline, James Thornton sat in his leather armchair, crystal tumbler in hand. The 65-inch television mounted on his wall showed the evening news, where Marcus's story was playing for the third time that hour. James hit rewind on his remote, watching again as the security camera footage captured Marcus's remarkable moment. The grainy video showed Marcus raising his hands calmly, his smile visible even in the poor quality recording. The reporter's voiceover praised his composure, dubbing him the dad who smiled at danger. But James wasn't listening to the reporter. He was studying Marcus's face, trying to understand what he'd witnessed firsthand earlier that day. The smile wasn't just absence of fear, it was presence of something else, something James couldn't quite name. He took another sip of his drink, the expensive scotch burning his throat. His own reflection in the window caught his eye, a successful man by all external measures, yet his face showed none of the peace he'd seen in Marcus Hayes. The last conversation with his son played in his mind as sharp and painful as the day it happened 3 years ago. You can't buy your way out of being absent, Dad, his son had said, standing in this very room. All those missed birthdays, the empty chairs at school events, you think a trust fund makes up for that? James had responded with cold logic, his default shield. Everything I did was to secure your future. The long hours, the sacrifices. Sacrifices? His son's laugh had been bitter. You sacrificed us, Dad. Not yourself, never yourself. He'd walked to the elevator, pausing before stepping in. My daughter, your granddaughter. She's going to have what I didn't. A parent who's actually there. That was the last time they'd spoken. James had sent birthday cards, Christmas gifts, all returned unopened. His son's words echoed in his head as he watched Marcus Hayes on the screen again. A father with nothing who somehow had everything that mattered. The phone rang, startling James from his thoughts. His assistant's voice came through the speaker. Mr. Thornton, the board wants to know how you'd like to handle the PR opportunity regarding the carjacking incident, given that you witnessed it. Not now, Patricia. James cut her off, his voice rough. He ended the call, standing to pour another drink. The city lights twinkled below, a sea of artificial stars. In the window's reflection, James saw himself, impeccable suit, perfect posture, empty eyes. He lifted his glass, comparing the man in the reflection to the image of Marcus Hayes, still frozen on his television screen. A father who could smile in the face of danger, who could comfort his child while being robbed at gunpoint. The contrast was stark, uncomfortable, impossible to ignore. James took another drink, but it did nothing to wash away the growing realization that despite all his wealth and power, he had no idea how to smile like that. The Monday morning sun hadn't quite burned through Houston's haze when Marcus guided his old pickup truck into the school parking lot. The engine coughed and rattled before settling into an uneven idle. He glanced at Lily in the rearview mirror. Her pink backpack clutched close as she hummed a tune. "Ready for another great day, sweetheart?" Marcus asked, forcing brightness into his voice despite the truck's concerning noises. Lily nodded eagerly, her dark curls bouncing. "We're making paper butterflies in art class today." Marcus climbed out and opened her door, helping her down from the high seat. The truck's rusty hinges creaked in protest. A few other parents glanced their way. some with recognition from the weekend news coverage, others at the loud groaning of his vehicle. "Remember what we talked about?" Marcus knelt to Lily's level, straightening her uniform collar. "If anyone asks about Saturday, just smile and say no thank you to questions," Lily recited, mimicking her father's gentle tone. Marcus touched her nose playfully. "That's my girl. Have a wonderful day." He watched until she disappeared through the school's front doors, then climbed back into the truck. The engine struggled to turn over once, twice, 3 times before catching. Marcus patted the dashboard. "Just hold on a little longer, old friend." 20 minutes later, he pulled into Joe's auto shop, where he'd worked as a mechanic for the past 4 years. The familiar sense of oil and rubber greeted him as he walked in, but so did his boss's stern expression. "Hayes," Joe called from his office doorway. "Got a minute?" Marcus's stomach tightened, but he maintained his calm demeanor. "Of course." Joe's office was cramped, with yellowed certificates on the walls and stacks of invoices everywhere. The older man settled into his creaking chair. "Look, Marcus, you're one of my best mechanics, but you're 3 months behind on the rental for your service bay." "I know, Joe. I'm working on it. And that truck of yours." Joe shook his head. "It's becoming a liability. Customers hear it coming from 3 blocks away. Not the image we want for a repair shop." Marcus took a steady breath. "I understand. I'll have this month's rent by Friday, and I'm saving for repairs." "You're a good man, Marcus, but good intentions don't pay bills." Joe's expression softened slightly. "I'm giving you until the end of the month to get caught up. After that." He left the sentence hanging. Marcus nodded, maintaining his composure. "Thank you for your patience. I won't let you down." Out in the service bay, Marcus threw himself into his work, trying to push aside his worries. He was halfway through replacing a transmission when a sleek black town car pulled up outside. A woman in an expensive business suit stepped out, her heels clicking on the concrete. "Mr. Hayes? I'm Catherine Wells, executive assistant to James Thornton." Marcus wiped his hands on a shop rag. "The CEO who was there Saturday? Mr. Thornton would like a word with you." She gestured to the car. Before Marcus could respond, James Thornton himself emerged from the vehicle. His tailored suit and commanding presence seemed out of place among the oil stains and tool chests. "Mr. Hayes," James extended his hand. "I've been thinking about what happened Saturday." Marcus shook his hand firmly. "Please, call me Marcus." "That smile of yours," James said, studying Marcus's face. "It's been bothering me. Most people would have been angry, scared, bitter, but you smiled." "Fear and anger don't help situations like that," Marcus replied simply. "Especially not with a child watching." James nodded slowly. "I'd like to help. Let me replace your car, the one that was stolen. No strings attached." "That's very generous," Marcus said carefully, "but we'll be okay." "I insist. I saw your truck outside. You clearly need reliable transportation." Marcus's smile remained genuine, though his eyes held a quiet pride. "Mr. Thornton, I appreciate the offer. But God provides what we need, when we need it, sometimes through unexpected ways, but always right on time." James's expression flickered between confusion and frustration. "This is an unexpected way. Why refuse help when it's offered?" "Because accepting help isn't always what we need most," Marcus said softly. "Sometimes what we need is to remember that material things aren't what make us rich." James stood silent for a moment, then pulled out a business card. "When you change your mind—" "If," Marcus corrected gently. "If you change your mind," James amended, "call me directly." Back in his limousine, James stared out the window at the auto shop growing smaller in the distance. The leather seats felt suddenly stiff, uncomfortable. He loosened his tie, trying to relieve the strange tightness in his chest. "I don't understand," he muttered, more to himself than to Catherine beside him. "The man clearly needs help. His truck sounds like it's dying. He's probably struggling to support his daughter. Why turn down a free car?" Catherine glanced up from her tablet. "Perhaps it's about dignity, sir." "Dignity doesn't pay bills." James echoed Joe's earlier words without knowing it. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through news articles about the carjacking. Every photo showed Marcus's serene smile, even in the face of danger. "Take me back to the office," James instructed his driver, then fell into troubled silence. That smile haunted him, not because it was remarkable, but because it reflected something he hadn't felt in years: peace. The limousine merged into Houston's late-morning traffic, carrying a confused CEO who had everything money could buy, yet couldn't purchase the one thing that intrigued him most: the simple, unwavering smile of a man who had every reason not to. The setting sun painted Houston's skyline in shades of orange and purple as Marcus finished washing the dinner dishes. Their small apartment was quiet, except for the gentle hum of the window air conditioning unit and Lily's soft humming from her bedroom. "Time for bed, sweetheart," Marcus called, drying his hands on a worn dish towel. "Can we read 2 stories tonight?" Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway, already in her favorite butterfly pajamas, clutching a well-loved storybook. Marcus checked the clock on the microwave. "Just 1 tonight. It's already past your bedtime." Lily's bottom lip quivered slightly, but she didn't argue. Marcus's heart squeezed. She was so good about accepting disappointments, more understanding than any 6-year-old should have to be. "How about we make it an extra special story?" He scooped her up, earning a delighted giggle as he carried her to her small bedroom. The walls were decorated with her artwork, countless butterflies and flowers, all drawn with the pure joy only a child could capture. Lily snuggled under her pink comforter as Marcus settled into the chair beside her bed. The book she'd chosen was one of her mother's favorites, The Giving Tree. Marcus's voice caught slightly at the memory, but he steadied himself and began to read. "Once there was a tree, and she loved a little boy." Lily's eyes grew heavy as the story progressed. By the final page, her breathing had deepened into the peaceful rhythm of sleep. Marcus gently kissed her forehead, breathing in the sweet scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Sweet dreams, my angel," he whispered, carefully rising from the chair. He stood in her doorway for a moment, watching her sleep. In the soft glow of her butterfly nightlight, she looked so much like her mother. The same dark curls, the same gentle spirit. The thought both warmed and pained his heart. Back in the living room, Marcus pulled open the bottom drawer of his desk. Inside, rubber-banded together, sat a stack of unopened envelopes from Houston Memorial Hospital. He'd been avoiding them for weeks, knowing what they contained, but unable to face the growing mountain of debt. With trembling fingers, he removed the rubber band. The first envelope held a bill for $47,000, just 1 week of Sarah's cancer treatments. The second was for $32,000. The third, $51,000. The numbers blurred as tears filled his eyes. They'd had insurance, but it hadn't been enough. The experimental treatments that had given them a few more precious months together hadn't been covered. Marcus had agreed to them anyway, unable to deny Sarah any chance, no matter the cost. His shoulders sagged under the weight of the memories and the crushing reality of their financial situation. He'd been making minimum payments when he could, but it was like trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon. The interest alone was drowning him. A car alarm blared somewhere in the distance, startling him from his thoughts. Marcus quickly wiped his eyes and returned the bills to their drawer. Tomorrow was another day. He had to stay strong, had to keep smiling, for Lily. The next morning arrived with heavy clouds threatening rain. Marcus packed Lily's lunch while she finished her cereal, trying not to think about how empty their pantry was getting. "Daddy, can I wear my butterfly clips today?" Lily asked, pushing her bowl away. "Of course, Princess. Let me grab them." As Marcus opened their apartment door to retrieve the hair clips from his truck, a white paper fluttered to the ground. His stomach clenched as he recognized the letterhead from Lily's private school, the only connection to her mother's family and the education Sarah had dreamed of for their daughter. Inside, Lily was humming as she gathered her backpack, blissfully unaware of her father's trembling hands as he read the letter. "Dear Mr. Hayes, we regret to inform you that due to continued non-payment of tuition, we cannot guarantee Lily's place for the upcoming semester. If arrangements are not made within 2 weeks, we will be forced to withdraw her enrollment." The words seemed to swim on the page. Marcus steadied himself against the wall, his chest tight. The school had been patient, working with him on payment plans, but their generosity clearly had limits. "Daddy? My clips?" Marcus quickly folded the letter and forced a smile. "Coming right up, sweetheart." When they returned from retrieving the clips, another notice waited on their door. This one, bright orange and impossible to miss. The landlord's message was clear. 3 months behind on rent, 5 days to pay or face eviction. Marcus pulled the notice down before Lily could see it, but his hands wouldn't stop shaking as he did her hair. Each butterfly clip felt heavier than the last. "All done," he managed, his voice surprisingly steady. "Beautiful as always." The drive to school was quiet, the truck's familiar, rattling a counterpoint to Marcus's racing thoughts. How had things gotten so bad so quickly? He'd been juggling bills, working extra hours when he could, but it wasn't enough. It was never enough. After dropping Lily off, Marcus sat in the school parking lot, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. The orange eviction notice seemed to burn in his pocket. The school's letter felt like a weight on his chest. The hospital bills loomed in his mind, like shadows. That evening, after a dinner of mac and cheese, Lily's favorite, though really it was all they had left, Marcus tucked his daughter into bed again. She fell asleep quickly, tired from a day of learning and playing, innocent to the storms gathering around their little family. Marcus knelt beside her bed in the dim light, his hands clasped tightly together. His whispered prayer filled the quiet room. "Lord, I need your strength now more than ever. Show me the way forward. Help me protect her, provide for her. I'm trying so hard to be strong, to keep smiling, but I'm scared. Please, just show me what to do." His voice broke on the last words, but Lily slept on peacefully, one hand curled under her cheek, the butterfly clip still nestled in her dark curls. Marcus stayed there, kneeling in the soft darkness, his prayer continuing silently as tears rolled down his cheeks. The glass-walled conference room on the 50th floor of Thornton Industries buzzed with tension. James Thornton sat at the head of the long mahogany table, his fingers drumming against its polished surface. Around him, 12 board members exchanged concerned glances. "Mr. Thornton," Gerald Matthews, the eldest board member, cleared his throat. "Your recent behavior has been concerning." His wire-rimmed glasses caught the afternoon light as he shuffled through a stack of papers. 3 missed meetings this week alone. James straightened his silk tie, a habit from his younger days when he needed to project confidence. Now, at 62, he rarely needed such gestures. "The company's numbers are solid, Gerald. Quarter 4 projections are up 15%. This isn't about numbers." Sarah Chen, another director, leaned forward. "It's about focus. You've been distracted ever since that incident in the parking lot." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "We've noticed you making inquiries about some mechanic and his daughter." The room grew quieter. James could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning. "My personal interests are not the board's concern," James said, his voice carrying the authority that had built this empire. But something felt different now. The words tasted hollow in his mouth. "With all due respect," Gerald continued, "everything you do is the board's concern. Your face represents this company. Your decisions affect thousands of employees and millions in shareholder value." James looked around the table. These were people he'd known for years, some for decades. They'd weathered market crashes and celebrated record profits together. Yet today, their familiar faces seemed like masks, cold, distant, concerned only with bottom lines and public image. "Meeting adjourned," James announced abruptly, standing up. No one protested. They knew better. Back in his corner office, James stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sprawled below him, a maze of streets and buildings he'd helped shape over 30 years. His reflection stared back. Expensive suit, perfectly trimmed silver hair, the picture of success. But his eyes looked tired, empty. On his desk, a photo lay face down. He hadn't looked at it in years, but he knew every detail. Him and his son David, at a baseball game 20 years ago. The last photo they'd taken together before everything fell apart. Hours passed. The sky darkened, and the city lights began to twinkle. James sat in his office, absently reviewing reports but reading the same lines over and over. Marcus's smile kept floating through his mind, that inexplicable peace in the face of danger. At 9 o'clock, James found himself driving his Mercedes through an unfamiliar neighborhood. The streets were darker here, the buildings worn. He pulled up across from the apartment complex where his assistant had said Marcus lived. The parking lot was poorly lit, with patches of cracked asphalt. James watched as a beaten-up truck pulled in Marcus's vehicle. The young father stepped out, moving slowly like he carried an invisible weight. He opened the passenger door, gathering a sleeping Lily in his arms. Even from this distance, James could see the tenderness in how Marcus held his daughter. Lily's head rested on her father's shoulder, her small arms wrapped around his neck. Marcus paused at the bottom of the external staircase, taking a deep breath. The steps looked steep, and Lily wasn't a toddler anymore. But then it happened. That smile. Even though Lily was asleep and couldn't see it, Marcus smiled. A genuine smile that seemed to give him strength as he began climbing the stairs. One step at a time, careful not to wake his daughter, pausing briefly on each landing to catch his breath. James gripped his steering wheel tighter, his knuckles turning white. The contrast was stark. This man with so little, smiling through his struggles, while James, with all his wealth and power, couldn't remember the last time he'd smiled genuinely. Marcus reached his floor and disappeared from view. James sat in his car, the engine idling quietly. The board's warnings echoed in his mind, mixing with memories of his own failed relationships, his son's angry words from their last fight. "I'm not walking away from this," James said firmly, his voice breaking the silence in the car. The words surprised him with their certainty, their defiance against years of carefully maintained emotional distance. The morning sun filtered through thin curtains in Marcus's small kitchen, casting warm patches on the worn linoleum floor. Lily sat at their scratched wooden table, her legs swinging beneath her chair as she watched her father pour the last of their milk into a mixing bowl. "Can I stir, Daddy?" she asked, already reaching for the whisk. Marcus handed it to her with a gentle smile. "Sure can, sweetheart. Remember what I taught you about getting the lumps out? Little circles, not too fast." Lily's tongue poked out in concentration as she stirred the pancake batter. Her pink pajamas had tiny unicorns on them, a birthday gift from last year that was starting to get too small. Marcus watched her work, his heart both full and heavy. The empty milk carton in the trash reminded him of their dwindling resources, but he pushed the worry aside. Lily needed breakfast, and pancakes could stretch further than cereal. "Look, Daddy, all smooth." Lily held up the whisk triumphantly. "Perfect job, honey." Marcus heated their old non-stick pan, the one with the slightly wobbly handle. "Now, how many pancakes can this princess eat?" "3, Lily declared, holding up fingers to match. "With extra syrup," Marcus chuckled, pouring the first circle of batter. "Let's start with 2, and see how that goes." As they ate their breakfast, Marcus noticed Lily, trying to save half of her second pancake. "What are you doing, sweetie?" "Saving it for later," she said matter-of-factly. "Since we're running out of food." Marcus's throat tightened. He hadn't realized she'd noticed their careful rationing. "Don't worry about that, Lilybug. Daddy's got everything under control." Later that morning, after dropping Lily at school, Marcus arrived at Pete's auto shop where he'd worked for the past 3 years. He had just pulled on his work coveralls when Pete stuck his head into the break room. "Hayes, there's someone here to see you." Pete's expression was unusually serious. "Says he's James Thornton." Marcus stepped out into the garage bay, wiping his hands on a shop rag. There stood James Thornton in an impeccable charcoal suit that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. The CEO looked oddly out of place among the tool chests and hydraulic lifts. "Mr. Hayes," James said, extending his hand. "Do you have a moment to talk?" They moved to a quiet corner of the shop, where James got straight to the point. "I'm here to offer you a job." Marcus blinked. "Sir?" "Entry. Level position at Thornton Industries. Community Outreach Division." James's words were clipped, businesslike. "Your experience isn't traditional, but I've seen how you handle people. That smile of yours after the carjacking, it stayed with me." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Thornton, but I'm not looking for charity." This isn't charity. James's expression hardened slightly. I run a business, Mr. Hayes. I've built my success by recognizing valuable assets when I see them. The way you handled that crisis showed remarkable people skills. We need someone who can connect with the community on a human level. Marcus thought of the bills piling up at home, of Lily's school tuition. What exactly would this position entail? You'd work with our charitable foundation, coordinate with local organizations, be the face of our community initiatives. James pulled out a folder. The salary is modest by corporate standards, but it includes full benefits, medical, dental, educational assistance for dependents. Marcus's heart jumped at those last words. Educational assistance could mean keeping Lily in her school. Why me? He asked quietly. There must be dozens of qualified candidates. James was silent for a moment, his usual mask of confidence slipping slightly. Because in all my years in business, I've never seen someone face loss with such grace. That's a rare quality, Mr. Hayes, one that could be valuable to my organization. Marcus looked down at his grease-stained hands, then around at the familiar garage. Pete had been good to him, giving him flexible hours when Lily was sick, understanding when he was late with rent. But this opportunity, could I have some time to think about it? James shook his head. The position needs to be filled this week. I need your answer today. Marcus closed his eyes briefly, saying a silent prayer. When he opened them, he met James's gaze. All right, I accept. Good. James handed him the folder. Human Resources will contact you about paperwork. You start Monday. He turned to leave, then paused. Don't make me regret this, Hayes. That evening, Marcus sat with Lily on their worn couch, helping her with her homework. She was drawing a picture for her art assignment, their family, which now consisted of just the two of them and a rainbow overhead. Daddy? She asked, carefully coloring within the lines. Did you get a new job today? Marcus set down her math worksheet. How did you know about that? I heard you talking to Miss Carmen next door. Lily didn't look up from her drawing. She said it was a blessing. Marcus pulled his daughter close, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. Yes, sweetheart, I did get a new job, a different kind of job than fixing cars. Will you still be able to fix my bike when it breaks? Of course I will. Marcus kissed the top of her head. This job. It's about helping people in a different way. Lily nodded sagely, adding another color to her rainbow. Is it because God opened a door we couldn't see? Marcus smiled, touched by her innocent wisdom. That's exactly right, baby girl. God opens doors we can't see. Marcus stood before the gleaming glass tower, his borrowed suit feeling stiff and foreign against his skin. The dark blue fabric hung slightly loose on his frame, a last-minute loan from his neighbor, Mr. Rodriguez. He tugged at the collar, trying to settle his nerves as morning sunshine glinted off the building's countless windows. Hayes Corporation, read the massive letters above the entrance. Marcus took a deep breath, remembering Lily's excited face when he dropped her at school earlier. You look like a superhero, Daddy, she'd said, straightening his borrowed tie with her small hands. The revolving doors whooshed as Marcus stepped through them. The lobby stretched out before him, all polished marble and modern art. His worn dress shoes clicked against the floor as he approached the security desk, where a guard sat looking bored. Marcus Hayes, he said, managing a warm smile despite his anxiety. First day. The guard's stern expression softened as he checked his list. Ah, Mr. Hayes, everyone's talking about you. He handed over a temporary badge. Welcome aboard. Inside the elevator, Marcus found himself surrounded by people in crisp suits and designer dresses, all staring at their phones. He noticed a young woman struggling with an armful of coffee cups and files. Here, let me help you with those, Marcus offered, carefully taking some of the precariously balanced cups. The woman looked up, surprised. Oh, thank you. She studied his face. You're the new hire everyone's buzzing about, aren't you? The one Mr. Thornton personally brought in? Marcus felt his cheeks warm. Yes, ma'am. Just trying to do my best. The elevator dinged at the 12th floor, and Marcus helped her deliver the coffees to her desk. Word spread quickly through the office about the new employee who'd stopped to help. By mid-morning, several people had found excuses to pass by his small corner office. Sandra from accounting lingered in his doorway, explaining the Byzantine process for submitting expense reports. "Nobody's used this office in ages," she said, glancing around at the dusty shelves. "It's been storage mostly." "Nothing wrong with humble beginnings," Marcus replied, wiping down a shelf with his handkerchief. "My daughter says every space can be made special with a little love." Sandra's professional demeanor cracked into a genuine smile. "You have a daughter?" "Lily. She's 6. Marcus pulled out his phone to show a photo of her recent art project, a rainbow-colored butterfly that now hung in his office. "She's adorable," Sandra said, her eyes softening. "You know, if you need any tips about good schools in the area?" Before long, a small group had gathered around Marcus's office. Tom from IT talked about his own struggles as a single parent. Maria from Human Resources shared local daycare recommendations. The conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by genuine laughter, something rarely heard in the corporate offices. During lunch, Marcus sat in the break room, unwrapping the simple sandwich he'd packed. He noticed a maintenance worker eating alone in the corner. "Mind if I join you?" Marcus asked, pulling up a chair. The man looked startled. Sure. I'm Pete." "Marcus, this is a big place to keep clean, Pete." "Been doing it for 15 years, Pete said, straightening with pride. "Know every corner of this building." 15 years? You must have some stories to tell." As Pete opened up about his experiences, others in the break room gradually drew closer, drawn into the conversation. Soon, executives in $1,000 suits were sitting alongside maintenance staff, sharing laughs over Pete's tales about the building's early days. Meanwhile, across town at Lily's school, Miss Thompson watched her young student practically bouncing in her seat during show and tell. "My daddy has a big important job now," Lily announced to her classmates, holding up a drawing she'd made of her father in front of a tall building. "He helps people smile, just like he always did. And look," she pointed to a stick figure in one window. "That's Mr. Thornton. He's teaching Daddy about computers and stuff, and Daddy's teaching him about being nice." The class giggled, but Ms. Thompson noticed something different about Lily today, an extra spark of confidence. Her shoulders held just a bit higher. Back at Hayes Corporation, the afternoon sun slanted through the windows as Marcus helped Ellen from marketing sort through a crisis with a delayed shipment. His calm presence and practical suggestions helped diffuse what could have been a tense situation. "I don't know how you stay so positive," Ellen said, shaking her head in amazement. Marcus thought of Lily, of the struggles they'd faced together. "Sometimes a smile is the strongest thing we can offer," he replied, "and it costs nothing to give." 42 floors above, James Thornton stood at his floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the break room through the building's glass exterior. He could see Marcus surrounded by employees, gesturing animatedly as he told some story that had the whole room laughing. The scene struck something deep within James, a memory of himself, decades ago, before spreadsheets and profit margins had become his whole world. A notification popped up on James's phone, another missed call from his son. He slipped the phone back into his pocket, his reflection staring back at him from the window. Below, Marcus was helping to clean up the break room, chatting easily with the cleaning staff, that same genuine smile on his face that had caught James's attention in the parking lot. James pressed his hand against the cool glass, watching the scene unfold. He couldn't remember the last time he'd set foot in the break room, let alone shared a laugh with his employees. The contrast between Marcus's warm presence and his own isolated position at the top of the building wasn't lost on him. Through the glass, he observed as Marcus gathered his things to leave for the day. Employees waved goodbye, several stopping to shake his hand or pat his shoulder. Even in his slightly ill-fitting borrowed suit, Marcus carried himself with a dignity that had nothing to do with clothing or status. The evening sun cast long shadows across the office as the workday drew to a close. James remained at his window, watching Marcus exit the building below, his borrowed suit jacket slung over his shoulder, heading home to his daughter with that same unstoppable smile on his face. The evening sun cast long shadows across the worn carpet of Marcus's apartment building hallway as James Thornton, still in his $1,000 suit, stood before the faded door of Unit 3B. He smoothed his tie, a nervous gesture that surprised him. CEOs didn't get nervous about casual visits. He knocked twice, hearing small feet running inside and a muffled, "Coming," that could only be Lily. "Who is it?" Marcus called from within. "It's James Thornton. Just wanted to check how your first day went." The door opened to reveal Marcus in a faded t-shirt and jeans, looking much more at ease than he had in the borrowed suit earlier. "Mr. Thornton, this is unexpected." "James, please," he corrected, then noticed Lily peeking around her father's leg, clutching a colorful board game box. "Daddy, can Mr. James play Candyland with us?" Lily's eyes sparkled with hope. "We just got the pizza." Marcus hesitated, but Lily was already tugging on his shirt. "Please, Daddy, we have extra slices." James caught the scent of pepperoni and remembered Friday game nights with his own son, decades ago. "I wouldn't want to intrude," he said, even as something inside him hoped they'd insist. Marcus's smile was warm and genuine. "Well, if you don't mind paper plates and kid-friendly competition." "Please, Mr. James," Lily added, bouncing on her toes. "I suppose I could stay for one game," James found himself saying, surprised by how easily the words came. The apartment was small, but tidy, with crayon drawings decorating the refrigerator and a well-loved couch facing a small TV. The coffee table had been cleared for the game board, and an open pizza box sat on the kitchen counter. "Have a seat, Sir James," Marcus gestured to the couch. "Lily, grab Mr. James a plate." "I can help," James offered, but Lily was already racing to the kitchen, returning with a paper plate decorated with cartoon princesses. "Mom always said games are better with pizza," Lily announced, carefully placing 2 slices on James's plate. James noticed Marcus's slight flinch at the mention of his late wife, but the father's smile never wavered. "That's right, sweetheart. Your mom was the family Candyland champion." They settled around the coffee table, Lily insisting on sitting cross-legged on the floor while explaining the rules to James with the serious dedication only a 6-year-old could muster. "You've never played Candyland?" she gasped when James admitted his inexperience. "It's been a very long time," he said softly, remembering a similar board game packed away in his attic. "My son used to love games like this." "You have a son?" Lily asked, dealing the cards with surprising dexterity. James nodded, his throat suddenly tight. "He's grown now. Does he still like games?" I don't know," James admitted, catching Marcus's understanding glance. The game began, and James found himself drawn into Lily's excitement. She celebrated each successful move with a little dance, groaned dramatically at setbacks, and kept up a steady stream of commentary about her day at school. "And then in art class, I drew Mom in heaven," Lily said casually, moving her piece to a blue square. "She's watching us from the clouds, you know." Marcus reached over and squeezed her shoulder. "That's right, baby. She's always with us." "What was your mom like?" James asked gently, surprised by his own interest. Lily's face lit up. "She was pretty and smart and made the best chocolate chip cookies. And she could sing any Disney song. Right, Daddy?" "Every single one," Marcus confirmed, his eyes distant but fond. "She'd sing Lily to sleep every night. Now Daddy does it, but he's not as good," Lily whispered to James, making both men laugh. As they played, James noticed the little things he'd missed in his own home for so many years. The way Marcus always listened intently to Lily's stories, how he celebrated her victories more than his own, the gentle corrections when she got too excited, and knocked the pieces over. The game stretched into 2, then 3, with Lily insisting just one more, until Marcus pointed out her drooping eyelids. James checked his watch, startled to find 2 hours had passed. "I should head home," he said, standing slowly. "Thank you for the pizza and games." "Thank you for playing." Lily jumped up to hug him, catching James off guard. He awkwardly patted her back, remembering when hugs from his son were just as freely given. Marcus walked him to the door. "I appreciate you checking in, see, James. Today went well. Everyone's been very welcoming." Good. James nodded, distracted by the memory of small arms around his neck and bedtime stories left unread. The drive home in his luxury car felt longer than usual. The leather seats seemed colder, the silence heavier. At a red light, James gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. "I miss him," he whispered to the empty car, thinking of his son, of missed games and forgotten hugs, of all the moments he'd traded for board meetings and profit margins. The light turned green, and James drove on, carrying the weight of a father's regret and the unexpected warmth of a simple evening of Candyland. Mrs. Rodriguez from apartment 2A couldn't stop her hands from shaking as she uploaded the security footage from the grocery store parking lot. Her son, who worked there, had helped her get a copy after recognizing Marcus in the local news. The grainy video showed everything: the masked man pointing the gun, little Lily clinging to her father's leg, and most importantly, that incredible smile that had stayed steady even in the face of danger. "The world needs to see this," she whispered, clicking the share button. By morning, the video had exploded across social media. People shared it with captions like "Faith in Humanity Restored" and "Real Heroes Don't Wear Capes." The clip played on repeat. Marcus Hayes, protecting his daughter, handing over his keys with dignity, and that unwavering smile that seemed to defy fear itself. In his high-rise office, James Thornton's phone buzzed constantly with notifications. His assistant burst in without knocking, tablet in hand. "Sir, have you seen this? It's everywhere." James leaned back in his leather chair, watching the footage for the 10th time. The same smile that had haunted him for weeks was now touching millions of hearts. His own corporate communications team had already prepared a brief about the video's reach. Over 5 million views and climbing. Down in the community outreach department, Marcus sat at his desk, trying to focus on work while his phone kept lighting up with messages. Coworkers walked by, pointing and whispering. Some stopped to pat him on the back or give him a thumbs up. "Hayes," called out Derek from accounting, "my wife can't stop crying over that video. Says you're what America needs right now." Marcus rubbed his temples. "I was just trying to keep my daughter safe," he said quietly. The office televisions, usually displaying stock prices and market updates, now showed news channels running the story on repeat. Reporters stood outside the building, hoping to catch Marcus leaving work. "The smile that changed everything," read the headline on Channel 7 News. "Local father's courage captures hearts worldwide." James watched the media frenzy build from his office. His PR team had already drafted statements, but none of them felt right. This wasn't about corporate image. This was about something real, something that had shaken him to his core that day in the parking lot. He pressed the intercom. "Get Marcus Hayes up here, now." Marcus arrived looking uncomfortable in his borrowed suit. "Sir?" "Sit down, Marcus." James gestured to the chair across from his desk. "We need to talk about this situation." "I'm sorry about all the attention," Marcus started. "I never meant—" "Don't apologize." James cut him off. "You've done nothing wrong, in fact." He stood and walked to the window, looking out over the Houston skyline. "You've done everything right. That smile of yours, it's waking people up, making them think, making them hope." Marcus shifted in his chair. "It's just how I was raised. Mom always said a smile costs nothing but gives everything." James turned back, his expression determined. "I'm calling a press conference. Today." "Sir, this isn't just about a viral video, Marcus. This is about changing lives." James sat on the edge of his desk. "Remember when I offered to help you that first day? You turned me down. Said God provides? Well, maybe this is how He's providing through all of us working together." Within hours, the lobby of Thornton Industries filled with reporters and camera crews. James stood at the podium, his usual commanding presence softened by something new: humility. "Today, I'm announcing the launch of the Hayes Foundation," he declared, cameras flashing. "A non-profit organization dedicated to supporting single parents facing medical debt and financial hardship. This foundation is inspired by a man who taught me more about courage in one moment than I've learned in 30 years of business." Marcus stood to the side, Lily holding his hand tightly. He hadn't asked for any of this, but looking at James speaking about hope and change, he understood that sometimes God's plans were bigger than personal comfort. "The initial funding will be $50 million, James continued, causing murmurs through the crowd. "And yes, that's my personal money, not corporate funds. Because some investments aren't about profit, they're about people." The reporters erupted with questions, but James held up his hand. "The real story isn't me or this foundation. It's about a father who showed us all that true strength isn't in fighting back. It's in standing firm with love and faith, even when facing our worst fears. After the press conference, Marcus tried to slip away quietly with Lily, but the reporters followed. Camera lights flashed as Lily tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, can we go home now?" she whispered. "Of course, sweetheart." He lifted her into his arms, shielding her from the cameras. James appeared beside them, directing security to clear a path. As they walked to the parking garage, Marcus noticed James watching him carry Lily, something wistful in his expression. The next afternoon, Marcus waited outside Lily's school, trying to ignore the parents who pointed and whispered. The final bell rang, and children poured out of the building. Lily ran straight to him, her backpack bouncing. "Daddy!" She jumped into his arms. "Daddy, the kids say you're famous!" Marcus hugged her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Famous isn't important, sweetheart. Being kind is what matters." "I know," she grinned. "That's why you smiled at the bad man, right? Because being kind is more important than being scared?" Marcus kissed her forehead, marveling at how children could make the most complex things so simple. "That's exactly right, baby girl." Marcus's phone buzzed on his desk at Thornton Enterprises. The message preview made his heart skip. Everyone loves a redemption story, but what about arrest record? 47,891? His hands trembled as he opened the full message. More texts followed. "Remember that night at Wilson's Grocery? When desperation got the better of you?" Marcus loosened his tie, suddenly finding it hard to breathe. The fluorescent office lights seemed too bright, the cubicle walls too close. That night had haunted him for years. The lowest point of his life, when Sarah was dying and their savings had run dry. Another message dinged. "Comment? You have 1 hour before the story runs." The name showed as Claire Matthews, Houston Chronicle. Marcus recognized it from the business section. She'd been covering James's charitable initiatives lately, always with a sharp, cynical edge. He glanced at the framed photo on his desk, Lily's gap-toothed smile beaming back at him. The same picture that had gotten him through that terrible night 5 years ago, when hunger and desperation had driven him to slip food into his coat at the grocery store. He'd been caught, arrested, but the judge had shown mercy after learning about his dying wife and starving child. His phone rang. James Thornton's name flashed on the screen. "Marcus, my office. Now." James's voice was tight, controlled. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt endless. Marcus's reflection in the polished doors showed a man he barely recognized, pale, shaken. The confident smile that had inspired millions was nowhere to be seen. James stood at his window, back turned, when Marcus entered. On his desk, a printout of the article waited to go live. "Viral Hero's Dark Past, the Truth Behind the Smile." "Did you think this wouldn't come out?" James asked quietly, still facing the window. "I should have told you," Marcus said. "That night, Sarah needed medicine. Lily hadn't eaten in 2 days. The insurance had cut us off, and His voice cracked. James turned, his face unreadable. "The board is meeting in 30 minutes. They're demanding immediate action." "I understand," Marcus said softly. "I'll clear out my desk." "Sit down," James ordered, pointing to a chair. "Tell me everything. No surprises." Marcus sank into the leather seat, his legs weak. "It was just that one time. Sarah, my wife, her cancer had spread. The experimental treatment drained everything we had. One night, Lily got so hungry she cried herself to sleep. I broke. Filled my coat with bread and peanut butter. Security caught me at the door." James's phone buzzed repeatedly. Board members demanding answers. He silenced it. "The judge was kind," Marcus continued. "Gave me community service instead of jail time. Said a child needed her father more than society needed another inmate. I've tried every day since then to deserve that mercy." Before James could respond, his assistant burst in. "Sir, the story just went live. It's everywhere." Marcus's phone exploded with notifications. The mugshot from that night filled his screen, a younger version of himself, broken and haunted, tears streaking his face. The office door opened again. 3 board members strode in, faces stern. "James, Damage control needs to start now. The foundation sponsors are threatening to pull out. Marcus, the eldest board member said, your position here is, of course, terminated. Security will escort you out. James remained silent, studying Marcus with an intensity that made the room feel charged. Marcus stood slowly. I understand. Thank you for the opportunity you gave me. I'm sorry I let you down. His voice was steady, but his hands shook as he straightened his tie one last time. The drive home felt surreal. Radio hosts were already discussing his fall from grace. Social media exploded with opinions, some defending him, others condemning. His phone showed missed calls from reporters camped outside his apartment building. He parked in the back alley and took the service entrance, avoiding the media circus out front. The apartment felt smaller than usual, the walls closing in. Bills he'd finally started to pay off mocked him from the kitchen counter. Lily's school called. The principal expressed concerns about the situation and suggested taking some time off until things settle. Marcus sat heavily at the kitchen table, his head dropping into his hands. The weight of it all, the shame, the fear, the uncertainty, crashed over him like a wave. The smile that had inspired millions felt impossible now. The front door opened. Lily's backpack hit the floor with a thud. Daddy? Her voice was small, worried. Jenny's mom said mean things about you at pickup. The other kids wouldn't play with me. Marcus looked up, meeting his daughter's confused eyes. She stood there in her favorite butterfly t-shirt, clutching the drawing she'd made at school, now crumpled from a tight, defensive grip. Are we still okay? She asked. The question hung in the air between them, heavy with all the things a 6-year-old shouldn't have to worry about: bills, reputation, survival. Marcus opened his mouth to answer, but for the first time since Sarah died, he wasn't sure what to say to make everything all right. The morning news blared from every channel, each anchor more vicious than the last. Marcus Hayes's face filled the screens, his old mugshot contrasting sharply with recent images of his famous smile. Sources reveal that Marcus Hayes, the so-called smiling hero, has a criminal record, announced a stern-faced reporter. Police records show Hayes was arrested for shoplifting 6 years ago while his wife was battling terminal cancer. In his office, James Thornton watched the coverage with growing disgust. The headlines scrolled beneath the anchors: Viral Hero's Dark Past Exposed, and The Smile That Deceived a City. At Lily's elementary school, whispers followed her through the hallways. During recess, a group of children pointed and giggled. My mom says your dad's a criminal, one boy taunted. Lily hugged her lunchbox closer, her lower lip trembling. The school counselor found her hiding in the library during lunch break. Would you like me to call your father? She asked gently. Lily nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. Marcus arrived within 15 minutes, his work tie loosened and his face drawn with worry. He found Lily curled up in a chair, her usually bright eyes red from crying. Hey, sweetheart, he said softly, kneeling beside her. Want to go home early today? She nodded, wrapping her arms around his neck. As they walked to his car, more parents in the parking lot stared and whispered. Marcus held his head high, but his jaw tightened with each step. Back at their apartment, Marcus called James's office to resign. I appreciate everything you've done, he said, his voice steady despite the pain. But I can't let this hurt your company or Lily anymore. James's assistant transferred the call, but Marcus hung up before connecting. He couldn't bear to hear James's disappointment, or worse, his understanding. That evening, Marcus deleted his social media accounts and unplugged their TV. He sat at their small kitchen table, sorting through a stack of hate mail that had somehow already found their address. Lily appeared in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed giraffe. Are we bad people now, Daddy? She asked in a small voice. Marcus's heart cracked. He pulled her onto his lap, holding her close. No, baby, we're not bad people. Sometimes good people make mistakes when they're scared and desperate. But that doesn't make them bad. Like, when you took food for Mommy? Marcus closed his eyes, fighting back tears. Yes, sweetheart, I was wrong to steal, but I was so scared of losing your mom. I've tried every day since then to be better, to be worthy of you both. Meanwhile, in his luxury penthouse, James Thornton paced the length of his living room. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. Board members, shareholders, PR teams, all demanding he distance himself from the scandal. "It's a simple decision, James," his CFO had said earlier. "Cut ties now before this affects our stock price." But it wasn't simple. Not anymore. James stopped at his wall of achievements, awards, magazine covers, newspaper headlines, celebrating his business victories, empty frames that had cost him everything that mattered. His eyes fell on a small photo he kept hidden behind the awards. It showed a much younger version of himself with his son at a baseball game. They were both smiling. Real smiles, not the corporate ones he'd perfected over the years. It was the last photo they'd taken together before money and power had become his priority. James picked up the frame, his finger tracing his son's face. The same son who now wouldn't return his calls, who had a daughter James had never met. He thought of Lily's bright eyes when she beat him at board games, of Marcus's unwavering dignity in the face of hardship. In his reflection on the window, James saw what he'd become, a man who had everything and nothing at all. The city lights twinkled below, indifferent to his inner turmoil. His phone buzzed again with another message from the board, threatening to remove him if he didn't handle this PR nightmare. James walked to his home office, where newspapers were spread across his desk. Each one condemned Marcus, treating a desperate act of love as an unforgivable crime. None mentioned how Marcus had turned himself in the very next day, how he'd completed community service and never repeated his mistake, how he'd raised a daughter alone while working 2 jobs to pay off his wife's medical bills. The weight of his own past mistakes pressed down on James's shoulders. He'd abandoned his family for empire building, chosen profit over people countless times. But watching Marcus these past weeks had awakened something he'd thought long dead, his humanity. James's fingers traced the frame of his son's photo one more time. In the stillness of his penthouse, surrounded by the trappings of success but devoid of love, he whispered to the image of his younger, happier self, "I won't fail again." Marcus sat cross-legged on the living room floor beside Lily, watching her small fingers piece together a puzzle of a rainbow-colored butterfly. The apartment felt unusually quiet, without the constant ring of his phone or reporters knocking at their door. He'd unplugged the landline yesterday and drawn the curtains tight, creating a protective cocoon around their weekend sanctuary. "Daddy, this piece goes here, see?" Lily held up a purple segment, her face bright with concentration. "It's part of the wing." Marcus nodded, forcing his lips to curve upward. "That's right, sweetheart. You've got a good eye for patterns." But his smile didn't quite reach his eyes today. The weight of the past week pressed down on his shoulders like a heavy blanket. Every news channel had run the story of his arrest, painting him as a criminal who'd fooled everyone with his apparent goodness. The memory of that desperate night years ago, when Sarah was so sick and their cupboard so empty, still haunted him. Lily worked quietly for a few minutes, then looked up at him with those knowing eyes that sometimes seemed too wise for her 6 years. "Your smile looks tired, Daddy." His heart clenched. Even his daughter could see through his facade now. "Maybe a little, baby girl. But I'm okay." "We could take a break and make cookies," she suggested, abandoning her puzzle to crawl into his lap. "Mommy always said cookies make everything better." Marcus wrapped his arms around her, breathing in the sweet scent of her strawberry shampoo. "She did say that, didn't she?" "Uh-huh." Lily played with the buttons on his shirt, a habit she'd had since she was tiny. "I miss her extra when you're sad." "I miss her too, sweetheart." Marcus kissed the top of her head, feeling the familiar ache of Sarah's absence. She would have known exactly what to do in this situation. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across their half-finished puzzle. The muffled sounds of traffic and distant sirens filtered through their closed windows, reminding Marcus that the world was still turning outside their little haven. "Daddy?" Lily's voice was soft against his chest. "Yes, baby? I said my prayers last night." She sat up to look at him, her expression serious. "I asked God to make sure Mr. James won't forget us." Marcus felt like someone had knocked the wind out of him. Of all the things weighing on his mind, the media circus, the whispers at work, the judgmental stares from neighbors, He hadn't expected his daughter's biggest concern to be James Thornton. "Why did you pray for that?" he asked gently. Lily shrugged, picking at a loose thread on her pink sweater. "Because he makes you smile. Real smiles, not tired ones. And he reads stories with all the funny voices like you do." She paused, considering. "And sometimes he looks sad too, like he needs someone to remember him." Marcus stared at his daughter, amazed at her simple yet profound observation. James Thornton, the powerful CEO who seemed to have everything, had indeed looked lost and lonely that first night he'd joined their board game evening. The man had fumbled with the dice like someone who hadn't played in years, but his eyes had lit up at Lily's delighted giggles. "That's very thoughtful of you, sweetheart," Marcus managed to say, his throat tight with emotion. "Do you think God heard me?" Lily asked, her brow furrowed with concern. Marcus hugged her closer. "I'm sure he did. God always hears our prayers, even when we whisper them." "Good." Lily nodded decisively. "Because Mr. James is our friend now, and Mommy said we don't give up on friends." Her words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Sarah had indeed taught their daughter that, had lived it herself through all their hardships. Even when they'd barely had enough to eat, she'd still shared what little they had with neighbors in need. The afternoon wore on, and they finished the puzzle together. Lily insisted on hanging it on the refrigerator with their collection of her artwork, standing back to admire how the butterfly's wings seemed to shimmer in the kitchen light. After dinner, a simple meal of mac and cheese that Lily declared perfect, Marcus tucked her into bed. She asked for 2 stories instead of 1, and he couldn't find it in his heart to refuse. As her eyes grew heavy, she mumbled, "Don't forget to say your prayers too, Daddy." "I won't, baby girl." He kissed her forehead and switched on her nightlight, casting soft stars across her ceiling. Later, Marcus stood at the living room window, gazing out at the Houston skyline. The city lights twinkled like earthbound stars, reminding him of Lily's nightlight. Somewhere out there, in one of those gleaming towers, James Thornton was probably still at his desk, weighing the cost of standing by a man with a criminal record against his company's reputation. Marcus pressed his forehead against the cool glass, closing his eyes. "Lord," he whispered, his voice barely audible even to himself, "give me strength." He paused, thinking of Lily's simple faith in prayer. "Not just for myself, but for Lily. And," he hesitated, then added, "for James, too. Whatever he decides." The city continued to shine beyond the glass, indifferent to his prayers but somehow comforting in its steady presence. Like the smile he wore even in his darkest moments, those lights promised that darkness wasn't permanent, that somewhere, somehow, light would always find a way to break through. James Thornton's footsteps echoed through the marble lobby of his corporate headquarters. Employees scattered like startled birds as he strode past, his jaw set with determination. The morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows behind him. His phone buzzed constantly. Text messages from board members, angry emails from shareholders, headlines screaming about the scandal. James ignored them all. "Sir," his assistant Sarah hurried alongside him, tablet in hand. "The board is demanding an emergency meeting. They're saying if you don't distance the company from Marcus Hayes immediately, schedule a press conference." James cut her off, stepping into his private elevator. "Today, live broadcast, 11 a.m. sharp." Sarah's eyes widened. "But sir, the PR team hasn't prepared any statements. The board hasn't approved." "No scripts, no approval needed." The elevator doors began to close. "Just cameras, and make sure Marcus sees it." In his office, James loosened his tie and stared out at the Houston skyline. For 30 years, he'd built this empire. Every decision calculated, every risk measured. His reputation was his armor, keeping the world at a safe distance, including his own son. But that smile, that simple, powerful smile of Marcus Hayes had cracked something open inside him, something that had been sealed shut for far too long. The morning flew by in a blur of ignored calls and frantic staff meetings. At 10:45, Sarah appeared at his door. "The media's assembled in the conference room. The board members are threatening to vote you out if you go through with this." James stood, straightening his jacket. "Let them try." The conference room buzzed with tension. Camera crews adjusted their equipment while reporters whispered among themselves. James could feel the board members glaring from the back of the room, their disapproval radiating like heat. At exactly 11 a.m., James stepped up to the podium. Camera lights flashed. The room fell silent. "Good morning," he began, his voice steady. "I'm sure you're all expecting me to distance myself and this company from Marcus Hayes, to condemn his past mistake and protect our reputation." He paused, meeting the gaze of each camera. "I'm not going to do that." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. James continued, his voice growing stronger. 10 days ago, I watched a man smile in the face of danger, not out of bravado or foolishness, but out of pure love for his daughter. That smile has haunted me ever since. Because in 30 years of running this company, of accumulating wealth and power, I'd forgotten what real courage looks like. He gripped the edges of the podium, leaning forward slightly. Yes, Marcus Hayes made a mistake years ago. He stole food to feed his child while his wife was dying. And you know what? That's not the story that matters. What matters is that he survived that darkness without letting it harden his heart. He maintained his dignity, his faith, and most importantly, his capacity to smile. The reporters scribbled frantically. Camera shutters clicked rapidly. This man taught me what courage really looks like. Not in boardrooms or billion-dollar deals, but in the simple act of choosing hope over bitterness. Of showing your child that love is stronger than fear. James's voice cracked slightly, but he pressed on. If our world can't recognize the value of a man who can smile in his darkest hour, who can teach his daughter that things can be taken, but never our hope, then maybe it's not Marcus Hayes who needs to change. Maybe it's the world. He straightened up, squaring his shoulders. So yes, I'm standing by Marcus Hayes. Not despite his past, but because of who he is today. A man of integrity, faith, and remarkable courage. And if that decision costs me my position or this company's stock value, so be it. Some things are worth more than money. The room erupted with questions. Camera lights flashed like lightning. But James simply stepped away from the podium, ignoring the chaos. Within minutes, social media exploded. Stand with Marcus started trending. Video clips of James's speech spread like wildfire across platforms. Comments poured in from around the world. This is what leadership looks like. Two fathers showing us what really matters. Finally, someone choosing humanity over profit. In the hallway outside the conference room, Sarah rushed up to James with her tablet. "Sir, you need to see this. The hashtags are going viral. People are sharing their own stories of redemption. The public is overwhelmingly on your side." James nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He pulled out his phone and dialed Marcus's number. It went to voicemail. "Marcus," he said quietly, "I meant every word. The world needed to hear your story, to see what I saw in that parking lot. A man who knows that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the ability to smile when everything is falling apart. Call me when you can." As he ended the call, a board member stormed up to him, face red with anger. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The risks you've taken? The liability?" "I know exactly what I've done," James interrupted calmly. "For the first time in 30 years, I've done something that actually matters." He walked away, leaving the spluttering executive behind. His phone continued to buzz with notifications, but James didn't check them. Instead, he thought of Marcus and Lily, hoping they were watching, hoping they knew they weren't alone anymore. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, and James didn't try to suppress his own smile. Let the world see it. Let them all see that sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is stand up and say, "This is what matters. This is what courage looks like. This is what changes everything." Marcus sat at his small kitchen table, staring at his phone in disbelief. The notification sounds kept chiming, one after another, like an endless stream of digital bells. Each ping represented another donation to the crowdfunding account someone had set up in his name. "What's happening, Daddy?" Lily asked, her small face peering up from her coloring book. Marcus's hands trembled as he scrolled through the numbers. I don't understand. His voice cracked. People from all over the world are sending us help. The amounts varied $5, 20, hundreds, and even thousands. Messages accompanied many of the donations. Your smile gave me hope when I needed it most. Thank you for showing us what real strength looks like. God bless you and your beautiful daughter. His phone rang. It was James. Marcus, are you seeing this? James's voice carried an excitement Marcus had never heard before. I can't make sense of it, Marcus admitted, wiping his eyes. It's too much. Too much? This is just the beginning. The Foundation's phones are ringing off the hook. Companies want to partner with us. Philanthropists are pledging millions for single-parent initiatives. Marcus leaned back in his chair, overwhelmed. James, Hold that thought, James interrupted. There's someone from Lily's school on the other line. Call you right back. Minutes later, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from James. Check your email. Now. With Lily watching curiously, Marcus opened his inbox. There it was, a letter from her school's headmaster. His heart pounded as he read the words, Dear Mr. Hayes, in light of recent events and in recognition of your family's extraordinary impact on our community, we are pleased to offer Lily a full scholarship through graduation. Lily, Marcus whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Baby, come here. She scrambled onto his lap, her dark curls tickling his chin. What is it, Daddy? Remember how we were worried about school? He hugged her close. Well, God just answered our prayers. You can stay at your school with all your friends. Lily's eyes widened. Forever? Forever, sweetheart. The morning news played on their small TV, showing clips from James's press conference. International networks had picked up the story. CNN branded it the smile that inspired the world. BBC featured interviews with people sharing how Marcus's story had touched them. Social media exploded with "Smile of Hope" trending globally. Marcus's phone rang again. This time it was his landlord. Hayes, the gruff voice said, I saw you on TV. Listen, about the back rent, forget it. Clean slate, and I'm dropping your monthly rate. You and that little girl of yours, you're good people. We need more of that around here. Tears rolled down Marcus's cheeks as he thanked the man. When he hung up, Lily touched his wet face. Happy tears? She asked. The happiest, baby. More calls followed. His old mechanic shop boss apologized for letting him go. 3 job offers came in from major companies. A local car dealership wanted to give him a new vehicle. The medical debt collectors agreed to settle for a fraction of what he owed. James's foundation office sent updates throughout the day. Companies were launching smile initiatives, encouraging employees to practice kindness. Schools were incorporating Marcus's story into their character education programs. Churches cited him in sermons about faith under fire. By afternoon, reporters gathered outside their apartment complex. But this time they weren't looking for scandal. They carried messages from viewers wanting to help. One reporter, tears in her eyes, handed Marcus a stack of children's drawings from kids inspired by his story. Lily sat on the floor, spreading out the drawings. Look, Daddy! They drew your smile. Marcus knelt beside her, touching the crayon artwork with trembling fingers. Pictures showed him standing brave during the carjacking, always with an oversized smile. Children had written messages like, Thank you for being strong, and You're my hero. The doorbell rang. It was James, carrying a thick envelope. The final tally from today's donations, he said, handing it to Marcus. And there's more coming in every minute. Marcus opened the envelope and nearly fell over. The number had too many zeros to count. What do I do with all this? He whispered. James squeezed his shoulder. You do exactly what you've always done, Marcus. You keep smiling. You keep believing. You keep showing the world what real faith looks like. Lily tugged on James's sleeve. Mr. James, want to see the pictures people made of my daddy? As James sat with Lily looking through the drawings, Marcus walked to his bedroom. He needed a moment alone. On his dresser sat a photo of his late wife, her smile so much like Lily's. You always said God had a plan, he whispered to the picture. I didn't understand it then. Sometimes I still don't, but I know you're watching over us. Daddy, Lily called from the living room. They're showing your smile on TV again. Marcus returned to find his daughter bouncing excitedly on the couch. The news showed split-screen footage his smile during the carjacking next to James's passionate defense at the press conference. "The smile that changed a CEO," the anchor was saying, "has now changed countless lives around the world." Lily ran to her father, arms raised. Marcus scooped her up, holding her close. She wrapped her small arms around his neck as tears flowed freely down both their faces. "We're okay now, aren't we, Daddy?" she whispered. Marcus hugged her tighter, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. All the worry, all the fear, all the desperate nights wondering how he'd provide for his little girl. It was washing away in a flood of grace he never could have imagined. "Yes, baby," he managed through his tears. "We're more than okay." The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Hayes Thornton Foundation's new offices. Marcus adjusted his tie. He still wasn't quite used to wearing one, as he watched volunteers setting up for today's single-parent support workshop. The space hummed with positive energy, so different from the cold corporate atmosphere he'd first encountered weeks ago. James strode in, his usual crisp suit somehow softer today, less like armor and more like clothing. "Good morning, Marcus," he said, a genuine smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Ready for another day of changing lives?" Marcus nodded, thinking about how far they'd both come. "Still feels like a dream sometimes," he admitted, straightening a stack of resource packets. "A year ago, I was fixing engines and worrying about Lily's next meal. Now look at us." "Look at you," James corrected, clapping him on the shoulder. "You're the heart of this place. These parents trust you because you've walked in their shoes." He paused, his expression growing thoughtful. "Speaking of family, I have news." Before he could continue, a young couple walked in with their toddler. Marcus recognized the tired look in their eyes, the same one he'd worn not so long ago. "Hold that thought," he said to James, already moving to greet them. "Welcome to the Foundation. I'm Marcus Hayes." The morning passed in a blur of meaningful conversations and practical help. Marcus and James worked in seamless partnership, James handling the business aspects while Marcus connected with families on a personal level. They'd discovered their different strengths complemented each other perfectly. During their lunch break, they sat in James's office, sharing sandwiches from the deli downstairs. "So, what's your news?" Marcus asked, remembering their interrupted conversation. James set down his sandwich, his hands slightly shaking. "I talked to Michael last night. My son." Marcus leaned forward, hope rising in his chest. He knew how much James's estrangement from his son had haunted him. "He agreed to meet for coffee tomorrow," James continued, his voice rough with emotion. "With his daughter, my granddaughter. I've never met her, Marcus. She's Lily's age." "That's wonderful," Marcus said softly, understanding the magnitude of this moment. "What changed his mind?" James met his eyes. "You did. Well, our story did. He saw the press conference video, the one where I defended you," he said. James paused, collecting himself. He said he finally saw his father again, not just the CEO. The next afternoon, Marcus was reviewing applications for the Foundation's Emergency Assistance Program when James returned from his meeting. One look at his friend's face told him everything. James's eyes were red-rimmed but bright with joy. "Her name is Emma," James said, pulling out his phone to show Marcus a photo. "She loves butterflies and wants to be an astronaut." His voice cracked. "Michael and I talked for hours, really talked, for the first time in years. He's willing to try again, to rebuild what we lost." Marcus smiled, remembering his own journey of healing. Sometimes it takes hitting bottom to appreciate what matters most. "Michael said the same thing," James agreed. "Watching how you are with Lily, it reminded me of when he was small, before I let the company become everything." He shook his head. "I can't get those years back, but thanks to you, I might have a chance at new memories." Later that afternoon, Lily bounced into the office after school, her backpack covered in glitter stickers. "Daddy, Mr. James, I made something special in art class today." Marcus gathered her into a hug while James looked on with grandfatherly affection. They'd both grown used to Lily's after-school visits, her presence bringing warmth to even the most challenging days. "Show us, sweetheart," Marcus encouraged, Lily pulled out a slightly crumpled piece of construction paper, smoothing it carefully on the desk. Both men leaned in to look. The drawing showed 3 figures holding hands, 2 tall ones wearing ties, and a smaller one in the middle with pigtails. Lily had used her brightest crayons, and despite the childish style, the smiles on the faces were unmistakable. At the bottom, in careful first-grade handwriting, she'd written, "Two daddies who changed the world with a smile." James touched the paper gently, his fingers tracing the words. "This is beautiful, Lily," he whispered. "See?" Lily pointed proudly. "That's Daddy, and that's you, Mr. James, and that's me in the middle. Because we're all together now, helping people smile." Marcus wrapped an arm around his daughter, his heart full. He caught James's eye over her head and saw the same emotion reflected there: gratitude for this unexpected gift of friendship, for second chances, for the power of a simple smile to spark real change. "You're right, baby girl," Marcus said, hugging her close. "We are all together now." James carefully picked up the drawing. "Would it be all right if we hung this right here?" he asked Lily, gesturing to the wall behind his desk. "So everyone who comes in can see it?" Lily beamed and nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, because then they'll remember to smile too." Marcus watched as James took down an expensive corporate award to make space for Lily's artwork. The bright crayon drawing looked perfectly at home there, a reminder of how far they'd all come and the unexpected ways God answered prayers, through carjackings and viral videos, through second chances and children's wisdom, through the simple power of keeping faith and sharing a smile. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Marcus Hayes, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.